Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jill Farmer. I hope you have been enjoying these Parkinson's Awareness Month videos that we've been sending out, and I hope that you have found the information practical and useful. Well, April is coming to an end, and this will be the last in our series of our Parkinson's Awareness Month videos, and I wanted to end on a high note. I wanted to end on things to look forward to and to share what the landscape looks like looking ahead for both research and practical gadgets that can be utilized to help make the lives of Parkinson's patients better. Before we can talk about new research, I do just have to remind everyone of something that is already currently available, because one of the research studies that we will be participating in at GNI is a revision of this current technology. So this is called the Duopa pump, and it infuses a gel form of carbidopa-levodopa directly into the intestine where carbidopa-levodopa is absorbed. And this graph on the left side of the screen shows that line of stability of the level of drug in the system during a continuous infusion of carbidopa-levodopa. The way that it is completed is through a procedure in which a gastroenterologist, surgeon, or interventional radiologist places a PEG-J through the stomach that then ends in the intestine at the site of absorption of carbidopa-levodopa. It can be worn for 16 to 24 hours, and most patients, when they utilize this technology, are able to come off most, if not all, of their oral Parkinson's medications, especially if they run the pump for 24 hours. Now, as you saw in the previous slide, it is a device that is about the size of a Cracker Jack box. It weighs about 3 pounds, and it is entirely external and needs to be worn in some sort of carrying case so that you can keep it close to your body to get the continuous infusion. It is wonderfully effective for managing off periods of Parkinson's, for the ups and downs that come with taking oral medication, but as you saw in the previous slide, it's rather large. And the biggest hurdle with getting patients to utilize this is the size of the device, the weight of the device, and discomfort around the insertion site of the tube in the skin through the stomach. Now, there are patients that utilize this routinely and are doing quite well, and there are some others that have tried it and have just found it a little too cumbersome. So with anything in medicine and technology, the look is to make it more user-friendly and more manageable for the patient. If anybody does have questions about Duopa and they're curious about utilizing what's currently available and in clinical use, please let me know. I'm happy to discuss this. I was one of the first providers in the state of New Jersey, or actually the first movement disorder specialist in the state of New Jersey to have a patient utilize Duopa and have a number of patients on this type of therapy. Because I'm such an advocate for it, because I do think it works really well, I was extremely thrilled when the company asked if we would like to be a site for their upcoming study for a different form of continuous delivery. So the new study, if you wanted to Google the abbreviation ABBV-951, there is information on the company's website about a subcutaneous formulation of carbidopa-levodopa that can be continuously infused, but no longer requiring the procedure of a PEG-J. This is something that can be infused directly under the skin. So no procedure is required. The way that it is infused is a small needle, what we would call a butterfly needle, just under the skin, held in place by a small plastic disc. And they have already completed phase 1 and phase 2 studies looking at safety and efficacy. So looking at, is this device and is this delivery safe for patients, and does the delivery allow for the same availability of the medicine in the system that current standards do with oral medications. So once they are able to do those two types of preliminary studies, they can then enter what we call the phase 3 clinical trials, and those are the clinical trials that take place with patients and doctors in their offices to be able to enter into the next phase for approval for the medication through the FDA. And this is what the new pump would look like. Again, this is something that you can find online. This may not be the exact pump that is utilized in this study, but it is very similar to this technology and this size. This is what's been utilized in Europe. The pump is much smaller. It is about the size of a small cell phone, and the medication is no longer a gel, viscous, thick form of medicine that's in a large reservoir, but it is a clear, thin liquid that sits in the first part of that pump. And then how it gets attached through the skin is through, on that bottom picture, you can see that small tubing that has a little plastic disc at the end of it. That little plastic disc is like the port which holds the small thin needle, which would go right under the skin. The trial was set to start in May, but with everything being on hold with COVID, it is being pushed back by about 6 weeks, and we're looking for a start time in July. It will be a short trial, about 13 visits over 15 weeks, but it is a placebo-controlled trial, which most phase 3 trials are. The good news is, since it is a short trial, if you do get placebo, you may qualify to get the study drug once you've completed your part of the study. So once we are able to start recruiting patients, which all of this material has been set and prepped by the company, we have it in our possession. It just has to get approved through our review board for whenever anybody does clinical trials. The sites that are doing the review, sites that are doing the clinical trials have to get it reviewed by a safety board, and making sure that everything is on the up and up and ethically okay, and all the things that you want to have in place before you do a clinical trial involving human subjects. So it's currently with our institutional review board, who will be reviewing everything and hopefully giving the go-ahead so we can start with this patient-facing recruiting materials over the next few months before the July start date, so we can have everything set and ready to go. This is something I'm extremely excited about because the requirements for the study are very reasonable. You have to have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. You have to take oral meds for Parkinson's disease, including carbidopa, levodopa, and you have to show that you have about 2.5 hours of off time per day. Now that sounds like a lot of time, and some patients may think, well, I don't turn off for 2.5 hours a day. I feel like my meds work pretty consistently, but it's that pretty consistently where we can tease out just how much off time you have. So if you notice your meds are wearing off 20 to 30 minutes before your next dose, and you take the medicines 4 to 5 times a day, then you've hit that 2.5 hour marker. So I think the eligibility requirements for the study are very reasonable. I think the impact of patient involvement for the study is very reasonable. It's not a very long, drawn-out study. And I think it's something that would be very approachable for patients to participate in. So I said I wanted to get this information out there because I get asked all the time in the clinic, are there any new research studies? Is there anything new coming out? What's on the horizon? And this is something that is a potentially practical solution for the continuous dosing and the inconsistencies of oral dosing of carbidopa-levodopa, which I think will be very attractive for patients. So now let's talk about some new gadgets. So there are three things that have been on our radar for some time, and one is called NextRide, one is called Gyro Gear, and one is called Upright VR. And some of these are things that we can just try in the office that are not part of a study, and some of them are things that we are looking to do a more formalized clinical trial, but nothing to the extent that's as involved as the phase 3 drug study. So NextRide is a device that was developed out of California, which is similar to the YouStep Walker in the sense that it is an auditory and visual cueing system to help with gait freezing. And we all know that gait freezing is such a difficult symptom to treat and manage with Parkinson's disease. Currently, we use cueing mechanisms through big therapy. We try to make medication adjustments if we can show that the freezing is related to off periods of and wearing down of the med in your system. We try to use devices like the YouStep Walker, which is helpful and effective, but also a bit cumbersome and heavy. So this is also utilizing a visual cueing mechanism with a laser light, as well as a audio cueing mechanism with a metronome. And we have the device in our office. They sent us a test kit through our connection with the Parkinson's Alliance, and we can utilize this in the clinic if you come in and you have a concern about gait freezing or gait initiation, taking that first step when you stand up where you kind of stutter and stumble a little bit. And what's nice about it is it's a device that is removable and can be transferred to different things. So if you have a cane, you can put this on your cane. If you have a walking pole, you can put this on a walking pole. If you already have a walker, you can put this on your walker. So it's a lot more maneuverable than the YouStep Walker that we have. And this is a video that will explain how the device was developed and how it can be utilized. The website is also on the bottom. Unfortunately, you can't click on it because it's a video, but you can write it down and Google it, and so you can see more information from their about their device.
This is Sydney from San Luis Obispo, where Cal State Polytechnic, Cal Poly is located, with Dioro devices, and brings us the NextRide. And it is my understanding that 80% of people with Parkinson's experience freezing of gait.
80% of people with severe Parkinson's, about 60% of everybody with Parkinson's, but 80% of people will experience freezing of gait at some point, yes.
And you were in school with a group of your fellow students, correct? And developed a device to help one person.
Yeah, so it all started with Jack. Jack is a local veteran that lives in San Luis Obispo, and he came to the biomedical engineering department and said, hey, I need help creating this device. Do you have anybody that would be able to help me do this? So my professor came to me and asked me if I would want to create this device for Jack. And of course, for me, this was a great opportunity to not only use my engineering skills, but also help somebody in the community. And that's how it all started. It really was a school project. It was just a project at the time, and we made it for Jack, and it really changed the way that he was able to live his life.
So it's a school project, but now it's a company that you started. You are now the founder and CEO of that company, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And if we can we see the NextRide in action?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit more about it. So it's a small portable device that can attach to any cane, walker, walking poles, whatever it is that you use.
Even the The activator from Urban Polling?
Even the activator from Urban Polling. We have those on our demos usually when we go into support groups. And it uses clinically proven visual and auditory cues to help overcome that freezing of gait episode. So the visual cue that we use is a laser line. And turn it on here. It's a laser line that's projected onto the floor in front of you. You visualize yourself stepping over that line, and that change of intention actually changes the neural pathways that are being activated in your brain and allows you to overcome that symptom. The auditory cue is a metronome. You imagine yourself stepping to the beat of that metronome. And again, that change of intention changes the neural pathways that are being activated and allows you to be able to overcome that symptom and be able to initiate movement again. So the whole idea behind this, and there is extensive research backing this up, there's over 40 peer-reviewed articles that have been published showing the efficacy of both the visual and auditory cues as well as the combination of them together that have been shown to not only reduce the duration of freezing of gait episodes by 69%, but reduce the frequency of freezing of gait episodes by 43% and reduce falls by 40%.
Amazing.
The whole idea behind it is that if you can change the intent behind the movement or change the motivation behind the movement by adding this goal, you actually change the neural pathways that are being activated that then allows you to bypass the damaged neural circuits that are causing freezing of gait and be able to initiate movement again.
Well, thank you. That's the little big things. One little idea for one guy becomes a big idea for many. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And just so you know, we are accepting pre-orders right now on our website, www.gyrodevices.com. You can pre-order the device. There's only 200 that are being pre-ordered right now.
You know my job better than I do.
And that'll be available in February.
Thank you.
So this is the YouStep Walker. This is something that's currently available and a number of my patients utilize. It's available through YouStep.com. InStep Mobility is the name of the company. It is something that is covered by insurance, provided that you have not had a walker paid for by insurance within the previous 5 years. And as you can see, the walker is not inexpensive. So this is just something to be aware of. If you are someplace and in the hospital or in a rehab and it is suggested that you get a walker, but they're not specifying the type of walker that you should get, and it is a regular 4-prong aluminum walker or a rollator and it's not that expensive, it may be better to find that at an old Goodwill store or pay for it out of pocket, because there are larger, more expensive walkers that are available that insurance does cover, but if they've already paid for the $75 walker, they're not going to pay for the $879 walker for another 5 years. So that's just some practical information. If this is something that you have been interested in, you do require a prescription and a doctor's note of medical necessity to be sent to the company. And then the company works with you to discuss payment options and to have it shipped and mailed and assembled and all of that. The issue with the YouStep Walker, while it's a wonderful walker because it's a bit heavy and sturdy, so you feel very confident and secure when you're walking, it's also a bit heavy and sturdy. So folding it and taking it out of the house, in and out of the trunk of the car, can be a little bit cumbersome. But it is something to definitely look into if you require the heft of the walker. If it's more for the cueing mechanisms to help with being able to get your steps going and prevent freezing, then the NextRide device might be a nice option to consider as well. So this is our next gadget. This is one that we are going to be part of a study for. This is called the Gyro Glove. You may have seen this or heard about this already. It is something that is coming out of Europe as well. And basically it's working on feedback mechanisms externally. So you wear a glove that has a gyroscope in it that when it feels your tremor going in one direction, it tries to push your hand in a different direction to steady that tremor. It is an interesting sensation. I had the opportunity to learn about Gyro Glove when I was attending the Movement Disorder Society's annual conference this past year in Nice. So hard as it might be, I had to go and travel to the south of France for my job to learn about the latest and the greatest things that were coming out in movement disorders. And I had a wonderful time, both in and out of the conference. But really, one of the highlights was getting to try this device because, again, I am a fan of things that might be practical. So if patients have a terrible tremor and medicines are not helping, Botox injections are not helping, they're not too keen on the idea of getting deep brain stimulation surgery, then this might be something that they can utilize. And what they're looking for is how well it works and maintains symptom control in Parkinson's patients. So it has been looked at for essential tremor patients because those are patients that typically have more of an action tremor where you are impacted when you go to try and do an activity. Your hand is shaking so much that you're not able to complete the activity. But advanced Parkinson's patients and patients with tremor-predominant Parkinson's have both a mixture of action and rest tremor. So it is the next logical step to see how this can be utilized in that patient population as well. And here's another video that you can look at to see just how the device works and how it can be symptomatically impactful for tremor patients.
House was diagnosed with essential tremor 5 years ago. Like Parkinson's disease, it causes the patient's hands to shake uncontrollably and makes simple tasks like sewing impossible.
No.
As long as it's not too tight around your...
No.
A group of volunteer students and graduates have designed a glove which uses the laws of physics to control tremors mechanically.
So we have an aerospace grade gyroscope in this. It functions exactly like a top. So as the top spins, it tries to stay upright. So in the same way with this, the glove actually counteracts your hand tremors immediately and instantaneously. So as you shake, it automatically cancels out the shakes.
I've done it! Oh, wow!
Patients report that wearing the Gyro Glove is like plunging your hand into thick syrup, where movement is both free and slow.
Yeah. I haven't been able to do cross-stitch since I got the damn thing.
The product could help an estimated 200 million people suffering from the same condition as Sue.
To me, it's a big thing not being able to put a bit of makeup on and not to be able to put a necklace on. There's all sorts of things that I can't do, but these are going to enable me to do a bit more, keep more of my independence instead of losing it day by day.
Initial tests suggest the gloves reduce shaking by up to 90%. The product's creators hope it will be given medical approval in the US and in the EU next year.
And this is just a picture of your trusty movement disorder specialist who has, taken one for the team and had to go to Nice, France to try out the device for her patients. Our next device is Upright VR, and this is something that has been developed at Temple University, and it's looked at for patients with postural instability. And they are interested in looking at it in Parkinson's patients with postural instability because, as we know, much like with gait freezing and balance issues, postural instability is something that we do not have great treatments for other than our behavioral modifications through the big therapy and other types of physical therapies. And what this looks like, this will also be a study. It's not just something to try. It's looking to see if virtual reality, those are virtual reality glasses, if you are put in a situation that can challenge your postural reflexes and your stability reflexes, is that sort of an exercise for the brain circuits that maintain your balance and maintain your upright posture. And then once you remove yourself from the virtual environment, does that improvement that you experienced during the virtual reality hold and then help you walk a little bit better? And if it does, how long does that improvement hold? So these are, again, interventions that can be utilized in the office through a little bit of trial and error through some trials that we're trying to work on with the different companies.
I'm Jeff Wright, and I'm a professor of neuromotor science in the College of Public Health at Temple University. So I've been studying postural control for about 2 decades, and what's interesting after all that time is you realize that people take standing on 2 legs for granted. So imagine that a patient or even a family member experiences a severe bout of dizziness or vertigo. We create a virtual reality simulation that allows you to experience that firsthand. The clinician can feel this and then have a better understanding of what their patient's going through. Our device actually tests their balance control by comparing their visual, their vestibular, and their somatosensory inputs to see how well they can keep their balance under various conditions. And this gives us an idea of specifically what might be underlying the balance disorder that they're experiencing. We can address the full spectrum of the issue by training the clinicians, accurately diagnosing the underlying causes, and then initiating the most effective rehabilitation.
So something that is not applicable just yet, but is a possibility in the future, are disease modification therapies. And I've had the lucky privilege of working and training under Dr. Fernando Pagan at Georgetown University for both my residency and my fellowship. So if you like my approach to managing Parkinson's, it is entirely because of the wonderful education and example set by Dr. Pagan. He has been working on smaller clinical trials along with Charbel Musa, looking at disease-modifying therapies, utilizing tyrosine kinase inhibitor therapies that are used in cancer treatment to see if it can be repurposed in the neurodegenerative space to clean out the gunk that is killing the neurons in the brain. So he has recently completed a small trial with very positive results, and some of my patients did participate in that trial as well. They are now looking to expand into multi-center trials, looking at more indications in the neurodegenerative space with dementia with Lewy bodies and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And they've started a company. And I have been asked to sit as an advisor and sit on the steering committee for this company. I was already chair of their data safety monitoring board for their previous smaller trials. So it is a collaboration that I am truly honored to be a part of, because I think it's phenomenal work, but I'm also extremely excited to be a part of it, because when the larger trials come to pass, it is the intent that we would be able to host a site for some of these trials. And I think as much as we appreciate the development of new drug delivery systems so that they're more safe and effective, really the disease modification therapies are the wave of the future. So switching gears just a little bit, we talked about the phase 3 drug trial, we talked about some of the gadget trials that we're going to do, but if you wanted to learn a little bit more about what these trials mean, how they come to pass, and what exactly would patient participation look like in this trial, I wanted to share this video with Dr. Christina Maxwell, who's our Director of Research at Global Neurosciences Institute, because it takes a whole team to do research. It takes the patient, it takes the doc, and it takes the research director, who really carries the bulk of the work with making sure all of the practical things and get done with the organization of the trials and all of the regulatory paperwork and all of the necessary trainings and review board materials that are completed on a timely basis. It is not easy, and it really would not get done without Dr. Maxwell. So she's going to take an opportunity to speak to you a little bit about the functions and strategies of clinical trials.
Hi, I'm Dr. Maxwell, and I direct the Clinical Research Program at Global Neurosciences Institute. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the types of clinical trials that we offer at GNI and what you can expect if you are interested in participating in one. The first type of clinical trial that we offer is called an observational clinical trial. As the name suggests, we are observing the clinical progression of your disease or the course of your disease and how you might respond to standard medications that you would usually take. The assessments that we do in an observational clinical trial, we may give you a diary, we may give you a phone call and ask you how you're doing. There are no experimental drugs or devices in this type of trial, and what we really want to do is just gather information for future Parkinson's disease research. So participating in an observational clinical trial is not intended to directly benefit you. The second type of clinical trial that we offer is an investigational clinical trial. This is the type of clinical trial that you think of when you hear the words clinical trial. In an investigational trial, we typically will use drugs or devices to treat your symptoms, to reduce your symptoms, and to improve your disease course. The drugs and devices in an investigational clinical trial are usually experimental, which means they do not have approval by the Food and Drug Administration or the FDA. Sometimes you may be asked to be in a placebo control condition, which means you won't get active drug. Sometimes you may be asked to go off your normal medications in order to enroll in this type of study. You will have a detailed discussion with your doctor about the risks and benefits of enrollment in an investigational clinical trial before you start any trial activities. And these types of trials are usually require multiple visits to the doctor's office. Please keep in mind that participation in clinical trials is always voluntary, and feel free to reach out to me and Dr. Farmer with any questions. Thank you.
So that concludes our final video for Parkinson's Awareness Month. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. And as things are slowly starting to turn back to normal, we will begin to open up the office for procedures soon, and then after that for office visits. But for now, telemedicine is still going to be the main way in which we see our patients. So if you are a new patient and interested in scheduling an appointment, or if you are a current patient and interested in scheduling a follow-up, please get in touch with our office and we would be happy to see you. Be well, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.